Clean water, a basic necessity of life, is at the center of a big debate in Tallahassee these days as Florida lawmakers take up how much to spend on cleaning and restoring the Everglades.
Senate Bill 10 is advancing through the Florida Senate. It has big goals and a big price tag and a big proponent in Senate President Joe Negron, who is here right with us this morning to talk all about it. Good morning, and thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Senator. Glad to have the opportunity. All right, you are on this campaign to have the state buy 60,000 acres of agricultural land south of the lake for above ground reservoirs, but you're getting some pushback from House Speaker Richard Corcoran, and the governor doesn't like this at all. So how are you going to do this?
Well, first of all, I think the governor does support water going south, and the 60,000 acres that we need, I'm open to looking at a combination of ideas, including some land the state owns south of Lake Okeechobee. The goal is simply to have a place for water to go rather than east and west where it destroys estuaries and our waterways.
Right. Well, it destroyed the waterways you're from Stewart.
Correct.
And on the eastern side of the state, we saw that toxic green sludge last year, awful smelling, bad for the environment, bad for the economy, happened on the west coast over in Lee County as well.
Yes, and we can do better than that. There's always been a plan for increased southern storage. The issue is really where to do it and when to do it. So what I'm saying is that in order to avoid these situations in the future, the governor declared a state of emergency for over 200 days. Businesses are out and gone. We had situations where literally there were signs in the ocean that you couldn't swim there because of the dangerous conditions. So I think there's a way that we can put more southern storage south and look at other options to make sure that the Army Corps has options rather than just flooding billions of gallons of polluted water
from Lake Okeechobee
into estuaries that were never intended to absorb that.
So this huge reservoir to the south has big blowback from particularly sugar and sugar farmers and those that depend on that industry. Why there? What are the other options? Are there other options?
Well, there's certainly other components of the plan. I think having additional southern storage is an indispensable component because no matter how much storage you have in other places, when we get a lot of rain in the summer in Florida, which we do frequently, and the lake gets to 16 feet, whether we like it or not, the Army Corps is going to open up the floodgates. So I'm certainly willing to look at storage north of the lake as an option, and also to look at land the state owns south of Lake Okeechobee to augment the amount of storage that we need. We certainly want to be sensitive to the agricultural community. We don't want to have any adverse economic impacts anywhere, but we simply can't have a situation where the best we can do in 2017 is that periodically we destroy seagrasses, destroy oyster beds, literally 18 inches of guacamole-like septic conditions, manatees poking their heads up trying to get over the sludge debris so that they don't drown. No one has a right to pollute the environment that way. And so I think if we do a combination of those storage opportunities, we can avoid these discharges in the future.
Can I just follow that up? What happened? All of this pollution, phosphorus-based pollution from the sugar industry runoff. Remind us what happened a couple of years ago when legally the sugar industry was bound to pay for that cleanup.
Well, the goal is for the water going into the lake to be as clean as it can be. And I think the agriculture community has made progress in making sure that their effect on the environment has been favorable compared to how it was 15 or 20 years ago. The issue right now for me is not so much the quality of the water, which of course we want to monitor, but it's the quantity. We simply cannot have a situation where literally hundreds of billions of gallons of water, fresh water, are flowing into communities that were never designed to take it. As most of your viewers know, the water used to flow south and it would go into what is now Everglades National Park and out to Florida Bay. Obviously we have 30,000 people who live south of the lake. We have cities that have been built with all kinds of drainage devices and we can't undo history. But the reality is the trade-off that we did where we said, well, we'll just manufacture these canals to go flood southeast Florida and southwest Florida. We heard from business owners, we're losing tourists, we're losing fishermen and women coming to our community, tournaments are being canceled, and the most important thing this morning that I want to say is if Florida ever got the reputation that our waterways aren't clean, that our ocean isn't pristine, that Florida Bay doesn't have enough water. That's the reputation of Florida. We're a state that people know we care about our environment. that if you come to Florida, you're going to have beautiful rivers and waterways that are clean for you and your family and your business. And that's what my goal is.
And a couple of years ago, Florida voters said, yes, we believe in that very thing. And they passed Amendment 1, and it produces, what, roughly $700 million a year in tax revenue. And is that the money that would fund this huge project? Because the price tag here, the last time I saw, it was like $1.2 billion. And then you expanded it for waterways beyond south of the lake, and now it's up to about $3 billion. And we're talking about a lot of money.
The voters approved Amendment 1 by over 70%. That's more than many of us got when we were elected or re-elected. They made it clear that we wanted to purchase environmentally sensitive land in order to make sure that our waters are clean and that we have good stewardship of the environment. So we have the funding available. It also, the amendment clearly authorizes and anticipates bonding. And so to me, once the voters have spoken, we need to implement the will of the people, and their will was that we have enough land to make sure that we don't have these toxic discharges and an appropriate use of funds based on what the voters told us.
Senator, I pulled the bill analysis. Can we just drill into those numbers for a moment?
Sure.
So I have to use these to read. The first option is to buy the land from Sugar, who is not inclined to sell it at this point, which is a whole other story. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, if the South Florida Water Management District unable to acquire that land, then it would purchase lands from Sugar pursuant to the 2010 agreement, which mandates that Sugar sell. But if that doesn't work, if those options don't work, Legacy Florida funding is increased by $50 million annually. And so does that fall on the taxpayers, option number 3, if the first ones don't work?
Of course, and the taxpayers ultimately are going to be responsible for purchasing land, for any construction of a reservoir, and I think that's a very legitimate and essential function of government. One of the sentences that's in Legacy Florida, and I had a hand in writing it, says that priority shall, not may, priority shall be given to projects that reduce the need for discharges east and west of Lake Okeechobee. So we've already passed legislation to address this particular issue. Now it's just getting the cooperation of everyone. And I don't think we should be pitting one community against another. Our fellow citizens who live and work south of Lake Okeechobee, they're concerned about flooding. Because if the lake ever got too high, we know back in the 1920s there was a tragedy with the hurricane. So they want to make sure that they have a place for the water to go. I think we can do something that will look back and say, you know what, in the year 2017, we finally took steps that have been talked about for 20 years. You know, the time for talking and planning is over. It's time to act. I think we can look back and say we came up with places to store the water so that it didn't get sent to destroy estuaries east and west.
When Charlie Crist was governor, he made a deal with U.S. Sugar. They agreed to sell, what, 153,000 acres to the state. And the option still exists, but now U.S. Sugar says, we don't want to sell this land. So we get back to what Glenna just said, which is you got either eminent domain or you pay an outrageous price for this land to bring it under state control to build the reservoir. I mean, these are difficult options.
They are, and we can't undo events that happened in the past. What I'm focused on is to work with willing sellers, and you know, the sugar industry is not the only landowner south of the lake. So I want to work with willing sellers that will sell us enough land, and as I said, use state-owned land as well. And we should look at northern storage contemporaneously with that.
Which the governor favors.
Which the governor favors. It's all a matter of timing. But everyone agrees, Michael, we had hearings in Tallahassee, many hours of hearings. Everyone agreed, even people that opposed my plan, that ultimately you have to have increased southern storage. It's just a matter of when.
The U.S. Corps of Engineers had this on their to-do list, but a couple of years down the road, you're saying, let's do it now.
Yes, sir.
Any fallout that you expect from President Trump's budget, which essentially cuts a lot of funding for environmental projects, funding that would go to the state as matching funds?
Well, we always want to monitor what our federal partners are doing, but this is a clearly, as Michael mentioned earlier and you referenced as well, this is clearly a part of SERP that's been approved. This goes all the way back to when Jeb Bush was governor.
Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan.
Yes.
For the record.
And so this is not a radical new idea. I've just stepped forward to say we need to do this now. Amendment 1's been approved. There's no reason to not go forward.
Senator Joe Negron, great to have you come in. Usually you're in Stewart or Tallahassee. You're glad that you came into Channel 10 today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay with us and we will be right back.